Hello and welcome to the Content Show, coming to you from my spare room. I'm Simon Kearney. I'm the CEO of Click2View. You can watch the Content Show on LinkedIn Live, Facebook Live, YouTube, and hear it on all good podcast networks. This week we've got an interesting show. We're speaking to mobile journalism pioneer and educator Corinne Podger about what it takes to be a mobile journalist, which is very pertinent in this particular time when we're all stuck at home and we can't go and talk to people face to face, which is pretty much a stock in trade of most journalists.
I think one of the things that characterizes a MOJO mindset is this willingness to make hacks and workarounds to basically turn this, which is a phone, into a broadcast studio.
We're also speaking to Benjamin Grubbs, who was a bit of a pioneer of live streaming in Asia. He set up broadcast services for Yahoo and was also a very senior executive at YouTube, now an entrepreneur in his own right, and publisher of a very interesting newsletter called The Creator Economy. He's going to be talking to us about, have we reached peak streaming? Well, we did last week, and we've probably hit another record this week, I'd say.
The total number of live streams on YouTube in March, up 93% year over year, and then 7% kind of month on month, and Facebook up 8% in kind of both of those time periods.
Then our usual segments with discussing content marketing with editorial content director David Austin.
I haven't left the house in days, and I actually kind of like it that way, it turns out.
And the week's latest branded content releases with scripted content director and Singapore's most famous Russian comedian, Artur Akhmetzyanov.
Yes, spork is basically a mix of a spoon and fork. That's why it's spork.
All coming up. Stay tuned. And that's it. Yeah, I thought I might have had something else to say, but I don't. So I'm going to go now to David.
Right, and we're back with our editorial content director, David Austin, for our regular session. How's your circuit breaker going now that we're in lockdown?
Yes, well, I haven't left the house in days, and I actually kind of like it that way, it turns out. But
thank you for shaving for us.
Yes, yeah, that was the weekly. At least I have some sort of routine now, thanks to this show.
We've seen your home office a few times now. We get to see my home office as well.
Mm-hmm.
So today this week in our newsletter Content Confidential, we discussed peak streaming and B2B content marketing in COVID-19. Peak streaming coming off the back of a newsletter post by Benjamin Grubbs, who's actually a streaming pioneer in Asia. Came up to Singapore in very early 2001, I think, and set up some of Yahoo's broadcast operations.
Yep.
So David, maybe talk a little bit about what Ben's been talking about in his newsletter, which is really interesting because he went on to be a global director at YouTube as well. And then after this, just so everyone knows, we've got an interview with Ben coming up.
Yeah, so Benjamin Grubbs has a long history in streaming. He was actually already doing live streaming previously during the SARS pandemic in Asia, in Australia, Singapore. And he mentions in his newsletter about how he sees similarities. And in fact, back then, that did drive more meetings. People that had to cancel meetings were going online. But of course, nothing like it's happened today. And in fact, now he talks about we've reached peak streaming. And he has lots of really interesting facts that he's compiled, where at least as of his writing, Sunday, March 22nd was the peak YouTube streaming day with 175,000 live streams in one day. And Facebook peaked on March 25th with 70,200 active accounts and 130,000 live streams. He's got a lot of other interesting facts, like the fact that Facebook was getting more engagement. Let me see, hold on, what's that fact? Sorry, I lost it. It was right here in front of me.
No, that's all right. I wouldn't be surprised if those figures have been eclipsed now, just by the number of Facebook Live notifications I'm getting on my feed.
Mm-hmm. Well, he did say that, yeah, the Facebook seems to be performing better as far as like attendance, and he attributes that to perhaps the platform's ability to remind people and kind of keep them on the hook, I guess, as far as when a Facebook Live is going to happen.
Yeah, it's all about the notifications.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
We'll be talking to Ben coming up in a little while.
Mm-hmm.
But also in the newsletter this week, B2B content marketing and COVID-19. And I guess the focus here is it's a really difficult time if your job is sales.
Mm-hmm. True.
Because you, and we've discussed this before, but sales and marketing, you have a role to complete.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a time where anyone, where it's really appropriate to be sold to in many ways.
Yeah, and that's why experts agree, and we've been sharing that it is all about trying to be helpful right now. That's the through line. Hopefully, you do care about your clients, and that any content that you are putting out should be trying to find some ways to give people some sort of service that they need. And in fact, later in the our picks of content, we talk about some people are putting their best advice on how to do telelearning, or the UCLA professor demonstrating how to run a remote learning class on Zoom. People are sharing what they know best, and companies and brands are sharing what they know best right now to try and provide some service for free. Audible just made a lot of children's books available right now for free to try and help people out. That's really that's kind of the best tack you can have. Yeah, obviously this is not the time for a hard sales push of any kind.
Yeah, that's what we've been doing. What I found interesting though was we tried to do a bit of promotion of the content show on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, I'm not sure, I haven't got an update or not today, but initially they disallowed the ads.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're discussing COVID-19 on the show, and they disallowed the ads because it was they thought that we were trying to profit off a sensitive event.
Yes.
Which is hopefully no one thinks that we're trying to do that.
Right.
But to your point, I think at the moment, I think ramping up things like this and just genuine content is what makes the difference. And that one of the fundamentals of content marketing is to make yourself useful. Don't be promotional. Avoid sales talk. So I think that's why it's, content marketing is very important at this time. And in the newsletter, I guess the other final point, which is another part of content marketing, fill a need. But put another way, just try and be helpful. That's really good advice.
Exactly. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, David.
All right. Thanks, Simon. Have a nice Easter weekend.
You too. Speak next week.
Okay. Bye.
Coming up next, Corinne Podger talks to me about what it means to be a mobile journalist. Hi everyone, and special interview today with Corinne Podger about mobile journalism. Corinne, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm fascinated about mobile journalism and have been for years. As we were just saying before, in some ways, we're all being forced to really utilize these tools in our work, whether it's journalism or just general content creation, or even just day-to-day office collaboration. Can you tell us a bit about the history of mobile journalism and how it's changed the industry?
It's such an interesting history, actually. The first person or the first outlet to use the word MOJO, mobile journalism, was a Florida newspaper in 2005, and they put the word mobile next to journalist. Over the last 15 years, as the cameras have got better, we've seen these devices used increasingly for video work and for photography. And since around about 2009, which is a long time ago now, the microphone on the phone was good enough for radio. So people have been using smartphones to create content for broadcast and for newspapers and for digital first news outlets and for government organisations with an increasing difficulty to tell the difference from traditional equipment.
Absolutely. I think what I love about it is it's all about innovation. So it's like looking at the fundamentals of your job and saying, how do I get that report out as quickly as possible? And especially in the sort of the video, the multimedia world, it has the immediacy of newspaper reporting. Like, you get on the phone, you talk to somebody, they give you a great quote, you write a story, and you publish. But now we can do that with somebody actually speaking on camera or having their voice coming through.
Or even, I'll tell you something that'll blow your mind. In the last couple of years, maybe it's just a year, there was an app called Otter, like Otter, the little animal otter, which is an app that will go on iPhones and Androids and a desktop. And what it'll do is simultaneously transcribe what you're recording. So it's mind-blowing for newspaper journalists, because a large amount of the time that used to be spent was on transcription. I trained in newspapers, so I know, you would come back with your little, mini cassette, and you'd sit there for the 3 hours it took you to and now you just, go make a cup of tea, come back, and it's done.
It's amazing. Yeah, we use I've used Otter, and we also use another app called Descript here at Click2View for the same thing. And in Descript, you can now edit a video like you were editing a story in a Word document.
Amazing. It has changed everything. And I think it's really, the real challenge actually is building that awareness amongst traditional, let's say, journalists working in newsrooms where the technology and the systems perhaps haven't accommodated an awareness of the kinds of apps that are available and what you can do with them, and also how affordable that makes the job of journalism. It's incredible.
Who's the best practice publishers out there for mobile journalism? I'm sure a lot of our viewers would like to know where they can look to see who's doing it really well.
The first one is the Irish public broadcaster RTE. So they've had a dedicated team of MOJO first, digital first journalists going back at least as far as 2016. So these are a group of people who are working, they started out on iPhone 6s, as far as I know. Then they were on iPhone 8 Pluses for a long time. And I think now they're using iPhone 11s. So they've chosen to go with iOS, just a bit more stable and reliable. But what they've been able to do is, among other things, the first half-hour documentary ever shot in 4K on an iPhone 6 that went to air in 2016. It was called The Collectors, and it was about people in Ireland who collect things. There was a collects Coca-Cola paraphernalia. There was a guy who collects model cars. There was another woman who collects dolls. And I think what they've done most successfully is marry traditional video journalism storytelling with all that goes with it, narrative arc and characters and so on, with a high level of technical capability. So great audio, great framing, good lighting, variation of shots, etc. But they've done all of that on a phone, including the filming and the editing. And they're filming in Filmic Pro, which is an industry standard app, and then editing in LumaFusion, similarly, an industry standard. So that's one. And the other one I'd like to mention is a project out of India, which is called My Report. And it's by a section of Bloomberg called the Quint. And what they do is they ask the audience to send them video, photographs, and text via WhatsApp. Then a group of journalists at HQ will check all of that, make sure it's accurate, and stitch it together into packages. So those are two really different ways in which two newsrooms are expanding their reach, their storytelling reach, at a more affordable price based on who's using what devices, and also engaging the audience in a very different way. In Fiji, the FBC, Fiji Broadcasting Corporation, I won't say all, but a large proportion of their broadcast work for television, phone, right? NDTV in India has a partnership with Samsung, which is, it's a bit of a win-win, right? So it's good branding for Samsung, but it also means that NDTV can do a lot more work that's multimedia. It can put cameras in the hands of more of its reporters affordably. The real question is it good enough? And then we have people who don't come from a journalism background at all, right? So NGOs like Médecins Sans Frontières, I did some capacity building work with them last year, training field medics and communications staff to vlog from the field in places where either it's not safe for a journalist to go, or there isn't an immediate news angle, right? But it's raised awareness of what they're doing in post-conflict and natural disaster and health outbreak countries and environments, and that's all being done on a smartphone. I see a lot of businesses using smartphones to share their stories to their Facebook pages. So yeah, everyone's doing it. I think as long as it's robust, though, if it's boring, forget it.
I guess, a lot of younger people coming through today, this is all native for them. This is normal. But it's almost like if you're in a content creation role anywhere of a certain age, you need to retrain. And what does it take?
I started teaching mobile journalism at undergraduate level because I assumed that, let's say, younger people would know how to use their phones and all of the apps that they might need to create content. And I realized that they don't. And so I think one of the things that businesses often do is lean on the younger people in the office, and often those people, like, just being young doesn't somehow magically confer visual storytelling skills or journalism skills, or indeed an awareness of the apps that you might need. Often businesses will frame a story in relation to how they would put a headline on a press release, and what my job is to say, well, I'm not sure that that's important to you, but it also has to matter to your audience. And so let's find things that, are win-win from a business point of view, but also will make people feel connected to your brand and to you, so that you have that relationship.
We're talking to Corinne Podger in Sydney, and I'm in Singapore, and you're watching the content show brought to you by Click2View.
Whenever I see a piece of work, whether it's video or audio or multimedia or an interactive or an infographic or, anything, I'm immediately thinking, can I do that on a mobile? Could I do that with a low-cost, cloud-based tool? Sometimes the answer is no, right?
Yeah, true.
So,
true.
If you want to create a high-definition GIF, actually, you've got to use Photoshop. And I have looked only recently, and I've realized that is the way to do it. Otherwise, you have to put up with a grainy result. Now, you could make a decision as a broadcaster or an outlet or a business or an NGO or whatever, that graininess is fine for what you need it to do, because each newsroom has slightly different needs. And then there'll be, that T-shirt, there's an app for that. There'll be quite a specific suite of apps and associated equipment that would go with that. To answer your question, what's needed, I hesitate to say, a global pandemic that forces people to work from home and find ways of doing their jobs. But what we've seen in the past 4 weeks is a blossoming of mobile journalism, and I'm loving seeing people say, oh, I've discovered this new app, and you go, yeah, that app's been around for a few years actually, and welcome to the tribe. It feels like a real, this is a horrific time for a lot of people, but it is a very bright silver lining in a very dark cloud.
What are you seeing at this particular time of social isolation in terms of user-generated content then being fed into the process? Because, as the journalists aren't necessarily truly mobile anymore.
Well, okay, so there's a couple of things. There has been a lovely series that RTE happens to have been doing, which is sourcing UGC from people on lockdown across Ireland, of how they're spending their time. That could include everything from doing exercises in the back garden to playing with the dogs to dancing, music, etc. So that's a really nice example. But I also think what we're seeing is journalism taking a step into the space of UGC itself, right? What I mean by that is we're seeing journalists filing their own content from their homes via Skype, WhatsApp, Telegram, Periscope, and also, of course, some adjunct expensive equipment if they have it and they can take it with them. But what I think we're collectively learning is that if the story is good, or strong enough, and the COVID story is the only story at the moment, there are sacrifices that can be made around quality that everyone is happy to live with. So that's what I'm seeing at the moment, is this plethora of examples that's been done on a phone or on, agile equipment. And this might be a good time for us to talk about what's the difference between MOJO and MOJO. But everyone's learning, and I think one of the things that characterizes a MOJO mindset is this willingness to make hacks and workarounds to basically turn this, which is a phone, into a broadcast studio.
Absolutely. I mean, what I love is that it really comes back to the craft of storytelling and the craft of journalism, and putting those professional skills at the forefront. And there's also, it seems as though there's a democratization, a bit like with what happened with social media. Like, the natural talent is going to come to the fore, and in some ways you can't hide behind working for a big publisher or a big organization. If you're good at what you do and you have an outlet, your stories are going to get seen and get recognized.
100%. 100%. I've been spending quite a bit of time on TikTok on the last 8 months or so. And what I've seen there is, these are, for the most part, younger people who are using their phones combined with the quite sophisticated in-app production tools to create incredibly sophisticated short stories, short films, dance videos, etc., that conform to some of our traditional aesthetics and surpass some of them, but also created new formats. There are formats that are available in TikTok that you don't see anywhere else, because that's how the app sort of. I'm also seeing some really terrific examples of creativity. For example, there's a group of kids. I'll try and find the Twitter handle for them, but they're a young group of kids from West Africa who do trailers of Hollywood films, all shot on their phones, and they're shot for shot, right? So they've done one just this last week or so about Bad Boys, the latest Bad Boys movie. And Will Smith gave them a mention on his Instagram because, of course, he's in Bad Boys. So,
awesome.
So there's no barriers left at all. You've got a phone, you can do this. What you then need to build up is your storytelling and your multimedia skills relating to each format that you're going to work in, and then the sky's the limit.
Clearly, it's a disruption what's going on at the moment, but it's going to be fascinating to see what life is like after this. Like, how much of this transition to online is going to stay online?
I think a lot of it, so my parents, and they go to the shops. That is what they do. And I've just shown my mother how to do her first online shopping order, right? My nephews are doing homeschooling using iPads. Now, I think there are two things that jump out at me. One is people who weren't traditionally upskilling in these spaces are having to do so. So our collective societal awareness of what's possible in terms of working from home, boss being comfortable with staff working from home, children learning in new and interesting ways. We can't unlearn any of those things. What's
fascinating is there's some of the gatekeepers have had to just say yes. And, you see that with telehealth in Australia, for instance. I mean, they've been banging on about telehealth in Australia for 20 years. And they finally were forced just to say, okay, let's do it. Whereas if without this crisis, it would have probably taken another 10 years to get everyone on board on how to do it and all of the, deal with all of the different concerns. But now it's done, and there's no putting that back in the box.
No, and people become habituated to a new normal very quickly, very quickly.
Yeah.
I think this is one of the reasons why it's so difficult for social and behavioural change to shift around something, because we get used to something really fast, and that's one of the things that makes it possible to survive as a human being. But yeah, I mean, I was reading the other day speculation as to what the response might be here in Australia, if we can stick with the country that you and I are from for a moment. We've suddenly had free childcare for people who need it, access to significantly increased unemployment benefits. So there's both ways of working. There are also policy changes around what's being offered to people to help them participate and stay engaged, stay in business, stay alive. The reaction, I think, if those are rolled back, will be really, really interesting. So it's in a Confucian sense, it's a very interesting time to be alive.
It's wonderful to see how adaptable human beings are, though.
Isn't it? And the learning curve takes you to that new level. I mean, you might feel like it's pretty horrific while you're trying to learn lots and lots of different things, especially if you are also not just learning to take your business online, but also to homeschool your children, who is also learning how to homeschool online. Do you see what I mean? Everyone's trying to learn. And I think the last 4 weeks, like March felt like it went for about 5,000 years. We're done with March 2020. Let's move on. But you're quite right. We can't unlearn it.
Awesome. Well, Corinne, thank you so much for being with us. It's a real pleasure talking to you. Corinne Podger, live in Sydney. Our next segment is with Benjamin Grubbs, who set up streaming services for Yahoo in the early 2000s. And he was here in Singapore running streaming during the SARS crisis, which provides an interesting insight into what's going on at the moment with COVID-19. He's talking to us about what's happening with streaming and whether we've reached peak streaming in the world at the moment. I doubt it somehow. I think we peaked last week and we're probably peaking again this week.
I'm originally from the U.S. and I grew up and studied in the States, and then I moved to Singapore and joined Yahoo full time in 2001 to actually lead the Yahoo broadcast business and build it out across primarily Southeast Asia. Back in 2001, was trying to build out the live streaming video business when it was still live streaming through a Windows media player or a real media player. We worked with Apple on trying to get QuickTime, but this is years before Flash and anything to do with like mobile video and watching video on your phone. So it was a pretty laborious process, actually, I would say, to get a live stream up on the internet back in 2001. But we had produced financial content. Most of it, I would say, was actually kind of B2B focused. And that's actually where a lot of the traction was. It wasn't so much of actually producing video content for the Yahoo consumer portal. So a lot of our focus was actually working with corporates and kind of conferences, trade shows, with financial companies and their IPOs or their earnings calls, and bring a lot of that content, through live video first, and then later accessible through on demand. I think there's way more consumption today, actually, just in consumer facing kind of video than corporate. The total number of live streams on YouTube in March, up 93% year over year, and then 7% kind of month on month. And, Facebook up 8% in kind of both of those time periods. But when I was digging deeper into what's driving that 93% year on year, I know that India, has been a key market for YouTube for several years now. And when Jio came out with their mobile data plan, that led to a surge in users in India on the YouTube platform, and the number of daily active users coming from India on YouTube, it makes it one of the biggest markets actually in the world. And I've just seen anecdotally through one of the companies that my firm is actually invested into called Stage 10. They provide a live streaming tool set to creators, and they've been seeing over the last year a lot of growth of creators actually based outside the US, also in markets like India or Southeast Asia. And so when I was kind of looking at just the overall growth and then kind of digging into that, just the fact that so much of that is actually occurring outside the US, it correlated with what I was already kind of seeing from some of the portfolio. I think like a business like our platform like Africa in Korea, I think it was back in maybe 2008, 2009 when I visited them in Seoul and saw what they were doing with live video with creators. And the monetization was not around advertising, but was around virtual gifting. And so you had people that were doing kind of news commentary or financial commentary or just other kind of like social kind of like chat rooms type style. And to kind of show your appreciation, you were kind of gifting them with virtual goods. That obviously costs real money to go buy the virtual goods. And remember at the time, again, this is over a decade ago, the company was telling me that some of the top creators in their platform were earning the equivalent of like $500,000 US a month.
Wow.
This is over a decade ago. So then like several years ago, when I was at YouTube, the product team was launching Super Chat, and was a way to kind of monetize live video through emoticons and badges and other items. And it was seen as a relatively kind of new thing. And I was thinking like, well, no, there's a company a decade ago, in Korea that was doing this. And so I think there's a lot of elements of online video, social commerce that are more widely adopted in the Asia Pacific region or in some of these emerging markets. The other part, though, is just looking at the data rates and the cost of data and the mobile consumption. And, in markets like India now, or in Southeast Asia markets like Thailand, and comparatively to what like you have to pay for data in those markets versus the US. So I was just digging into this recently, and so in India, here in the US, there's an announcement came out, I think it was last week, from T-Mobile, one of the carriers here that they merged with Sprint, and the announcement was that they're going to come out with a new low priced data plan for $15 US a month. And they said that because of coronavirus and COVID-19 and coronavirus, they're accelerating the rollout of this. They were planning to do this anyway because of the merger actually with Sprint. So for $15 US a month, you get 2 gig of data a month. Geo in India, the price there is $3.27 US a month, and you get 2 gig of data a day.
Ah.
So you could do purchase power parity and the comparison there of income standards in the US and in India, and then start to kind of do some comparison there. But with one, it's 2 gig a month. The other is 2 gig a day. And so I think that there's also just the fact that the cost of data and mobile data and the ability for YouTube, Facebook, and other platforms allow you to go live stream from your phone, and then just the consumption of live content as well, is there. So I think that also plays some role in why the adoption is what it is and why the overall metrics are what they are.
Okay, and welcome back to the Content Show. I'm Simon Kearney, and I'm here with our scripted content director and Singapore's most famous Russian comedian and funniest, Artur Akhmetzyanov.
Yay! Thank you very much.
This is your only chance to tell jokes at the moment, so
yeah, I will try my best.
Yeah, make the most of it. So quickly, this is our rundown of the best branded content releases of the week. So these are all new releases. The first is one of ours, a podcast, our latest podcast for the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, Foreseeable podcast, all about recycled drinking water. We already drink recycled drinking water in Singapore, don't we?
I bet we do. I never actually questioned it. I trust. I just drink. But our editorial content director, David Austin, is basically talking to one of the scientists from NUS about the recycled drinking water. And they cover interesting questions. And one of them that I kind of really remembered was the question whether the choice to drink recycled water is a rational choice or irrational one. Whether you drink it and you think it's okay because the scientist told you that it's safe, or whether it's because your friends and everyone around drink it. So again, like, I never question myself. I just believe it works.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where you've got to, if you think about it, well, I don't know, it starts out thinking yucky, but if you're a rational person, and let's admit it, there's not that many rational people around, exactly. You get past it. If you're an irrational person, like most of the population, maybe not.
Yep.
So the second one was one of ours as well, for Singtel, and this is this is our blog about the Singapore's latest budget, the Solidarity budget, which came down this week, and we had to turn that around super quick in a few hours for Singtel. For their small business platform to tell small businesses in Singapore what the latest budget measures are to to help people get through this difficult time. Then we move on to a video from Huawei in Malaysia, where they've been using AI solutions to select the best and spiciest chilies. How do they do that?
Well, it's amazing because in Malaysia, chilies and spices are definitely a big part of culture, and some people consider that chili is the main meal. And basically, this startup Hexa, they are using AI to use like image recognition and analyze like the shape, the ripeness of the spices, and then they basically select it on the conveyor belt and just make sure that only the best spices are used.
I wonder if they have some sort of quality control, or
I'm sure they do.
Then moving on, Zoom, the company of the moment, it's got a customer success story out, and it looks at how a UCLA professor, UCLA is a university in California, very big university, and how to run a remote learning class on Zoom.
Yeah, this professor of psychology basically gives a great breakdown of how they are shifting from physical to virtual learning, and how they are utilizing the features of Zoom. And one of the cool ones for me was that they can actually mimic the breakout sessions, where they can select kind of separate mini Zoom rooms, and then they break the whole group. They can do their own assignments just in small rooms, and then they bring them to the overall call. So it's kind of quite cool that all these modern technologies can mimic the real classroom experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating what's going on at the moment, and we've been learning a lot about all these platforms ourselves. And I'm just fascinated by what, like, at the end of this, are we ever going to go back to face to face?
I'm sure we will. It won't be as pleasant, but we will.
Actually, I think it is. Judging by how I feel, I think it's deeply ingrained in human psychology, the need to talk to people face to face.
All right.
All right. This next one is a bit weird. American actor and comedian Tony Hale digging deep to explain how he became a spork. I'd never even heard of this term, spork. In Australia, we call them splades, and Artur, you can explain what a spork or a splade is?
Yeah, spork is basically a mix of a spoon and fork. That's why it's spork. And the main character, Forky, in the cartoon, for those who didn't watch, it's basically a toy that was created from trash, from different pieces that end up in the rubbish bin. And the actor just tells his experience, and he kind of takes the sort of character of a method actor, and he talks about taking his bag and basically camping out in the dumpster, saying to his family, "Don't come after me. I'm really getting into the role." So he took the preparation very seriously.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd do that. But anyway, then the next item on our list is from MailChimp, and the business success story of Ad Hoc.
Yes, Ad Hoc was basically, they started originally as a musical publication, then they evolved into the promoter and then the creative agency. And MailChimp, that's probably most people know as just a mail marketing solution. They have a lot of features that allow you to segment the audiences. So Ad Hoc, for example, they filtered those ticket buyers, and they can even allocate like to different music genres, and then they can personalize their upcoming campaigns, and that help them a lot to know their audience better and basically grow the business.
Awesome. And the final one, I really like this one. This is from IBM, and how Iceland keeps its 8,000 miles or 13,000 kilometers of roads clear from snow.
Yeah, it's amazing because the story, the video, it's a short video, it's a short case study, but it begins with this horrible, tough times and situation that Iceland people have to face. Snow, blizzards, basically reminded me of Mother Russia, and I don't miss it. And they use AI to tell them what are the places that they need to attack first, and basically build the most efficient routes and make sure that the basic infrastructure is under control. So it's amazing that even like in today's this week's picks, we have two very, very different approaches on how AI can help, whether picking spices or whether cleaning roads out of snow.
Yeah, I love all this stuff. I can't wait for AI to take over the world, and I can
Finally.
put my feet up, and I'm sure that the governments of the world and the companies with AI will come to the party and make sure that we've got enough income to survive. And
they will.
All right. Thank you very much, Artur.
Thank you, Simon. Take care. Enjoy your installation.
Stay safe. And thank you very much for watching episode 5 of The Content Show. I'm Simon Kearney. This is brought to you by Click2View. Thank you for watching.